Last night, as we were going over our headline section, I brought to you an article from the Washington Post that was written about the history of Nick Reiner. And after consideration overnight, I've decided that we're going to dive a little more deeply into that article because it gives us more insight into Nick Reiner's upbringing. Now, this is not for the purpose of pointing fingers or casting blame or anything like that. It's for the purpose of just trying to figure out what may have happened, and also so that we might prevent something like this from happening in the future. And I'm talking like societally, not individually, you and me. So we're going to get into it. I'm really looking forward to it. Stick with me. This video contains mature themes and discussions intended only for adult audiences. Viewer discretion is advised. Hello there, my friend. Welcome back to another true crime conversation with me, Gavin Fish. I sure am glad you're here. If you like to cut through the fluff and the sensationalism of true crime and get down into the nitty gritty, that's what we do here. That's what you found, and I hope you stick around. Thank you for joining me wherever you're joining me from. I saw the comment yesterday that said, hey, it's like Romper Room when you read where everybody's from, but I just love it so much. So Romper Room it shall be. Please tell me in the comments where you're joining me from. Guys, tonight we are continuing our coverage of the murders of Rob and Michele Reiner, the Hollywood iconic couple that brought us so many classics that, how do you even name them all? And, we as societally speaking, I think we value our entertainment maybe more than we value a lot of other things. But, maybe the first great movie I ever saw where I just felt like, man, that was a great movie was A Few Good Men. That's a Rob Reiner joint, right? Uh, I probably should have said Princess Bride, but I was too young to understand what greatness was. But anyway, these two last month were found having suffered sharp instrument wounds. I don't know if they were stabbed or slashed. And of course, we want to temper our coverage here with compassion with humanity. And I think the reason that we are sticking with this case is because we love these folks. And let's be honest. Rob Reiner was a little more public forward, a little more public facing. But both of them are responsible for so many wonderful things that have entertained us and have taught us and have informed us over the years. So that's probably why we're here. Now, shortly after they were discovered, their son, Nick, age 32, was arrested and shortly thereafter charged with the murder. Now, Mr. Nick Reiner has a long history that is well documented by himself and others. He has a long history of substance abuse issues and mental illness issues. This is actually one of these cases where it's quite sad all the way around, right? There's no boogeyman to go after, at least in my opinion. There's no like, hey, there's evil personified. Let's make sure that evil gets, held to the highest standard and that justice might prevail. Now, in this one, it just feels like there is none of that. There is just sickness. There's just mental illness. There's just disease. And there's just tragedy all the way around. But you may have a different opinion than I do, but that's the way I feel about this particular case. I take no joy in talking about this beyond the satisfaction of learning something new and trying to, this case might be the catalyst that makes some real changes in the way that we treat members of our families and our communities that are suffering from mental illness. This case might do that, and it might make a big difference for others. And so I think it's important to keep it in the zeitgeist, to continue to talk about it. And that's what we're going to do here. Now, I know that in the commentary, there were people that took umbrage with the title of the live stream, but I just want you to know that that's my intent is not to glorify or sensationalize this. My goal is that we might learn something, that we might be able to apply it to our laws, to the way that we interact with one another, to the way we build and maintain our communities. And yeah, so I guess that's all I have to say about that. Let me check in with y'all to see where you are tuning in from. I love this part of it. Okay, Tel Aviv, right out of the gate, we got somebody tuning in from Tel Aviv. Let's see if I can get this up on the screen. There we are. Amy and Noam from Tel Aviv, Calgary, Canada, Maine, Marietta, Georgia, the Inner Banks in North Carolina, Oregon, Houston, Texas, Bermuda is back in the fishbowl. Thank you very much. North Carolina, Ohio, Lake George, New York, Tennessee, Colorado, Elverson, PA, sunny but cold St. Augustine, Florida, Puebla, Mexico is in the house, Lakeland, Florida, Knoxville, Tennessee. Elizabeth says, I loved Romper Room. Hello from frigid coastal Virginia. I loved Romper Room too, though that was, I might be on the really, really young side of those of us who remember Romper Room. No way, Schmoopy says, Miss Molly lives 4 houses from me. That's awesome. More in North Carolina, man. We got our fair share of representation there. Fort Worth, Texas, Central Ohio, Northern Idaho, wrong button. There we go. Baltimore, Southampton is in the house. Sudbury, Mass, Pittsburgh, PA, my neck of the woods, Meredith, New Hampshire, Houston, Texas, New Zealand is here. Thank you guys so much. I do see that we've got a couple of comments. Let's hop in on these real quick before we get into the article. Gavin, it seemed like Nick was always being coaxed into participating in events he didn't enjoy. The dinner in the photo, the dinner in the WAPO article, Spinal Tap 2 premiere, the Conan O'Brien party. I guess it does. I guess I can see that point of view. Sure. Also, though, I can see it from the other side where he was, and this is, I shouldn't say this as if I know this, but it seems that he was their dependent and they were worried about him and brought him along for a lot of different reasons. And I can think of, in my family, Kimberly and I have this, it's now kind of a running joke. It's forced family time. When the kids were little, we would just yell out forced family time. That meant turn off the TV, turn off and stop doing whatever you're doing. We're doing something together. We still do that. And now when we had our second batch of kids, because we have 5 kids in 2 batches, our little boy would be like, I want forced family time. So now it's become just like a thing that we all look forward to, forced family time. And maybe that's what they were doing with Nick. This kid, for reasons within and beyond his control, it appears to me, needed parentage. No, parentage is not the right word. Parenting. He needed parenting. It seems like to me, but I recognize, or I appreciate that comment. Jenny is a fanatic for 1 month. Thanks for all the great compassionate coverage on every case you talk about. Gavin, thanks to your great mods for being so welcoming. Great chat too. Yeah, we've got great mods, and thank you. Glad you are here. See if there's anything else. Here we are. Libu Grizzly arrived a bit late, but managed to catch a live watching from Salvador, Brazil, originally from Durban, South Africa. Very cool. Thanks, guys. Thanks for tuning in. All right. Let's join me, if you will, over here. I'm going to start it over. We read the first 5 or 6 paragraphs yesterday, but I'm going to reread this. This is about a 10-page article. It goes by pretty quickly. Don't worry about it. I'm going to do my best to do breathing exercises because I'm not tired. Just have to have lots of oxygen. It seems like when I read, I start to yawn. By the way, guys, and this is a tangent. Here we go. I have decided in 2026 that I am going to read 6 fictional books, 6 classics. And that gives me 2 months to read each one. I am a pretty fast reader, but with fiction, I have a harder time. Right now, I'm reading A Tale of Two Cities. And it just, as I read, it does kind of make me yawn. Dang it, fish. Okay. Yeah, you guys are going to hear me yawn today. I'm going to do my breathing exercises. Okay. How friends describe Nick Reiner, the son of Rob and Michele. And by the way, that isn't the headline that the WAPO actually gave this. I don't know why when I printed it, it did that. Let me see this. Washington Post, Nick Reiner. On the actual Post article, and I can bring it up here for you to see, it says, Inside Nick Reiner's Life of Privilege, Pills, and Pain. The subhead says, friends say Reiner bounced constantly between rehab centers and his family's Los Angeles mansion where he is accused of killing his parents, Rob and Michele Reiner. But I'm going to read it from Acrobat because it just does, it's easier for me. No ads and all that stuff. Okay. By Amy Kaufman. Rob Reiner lifted a turkey leg and asked those gathered around the Thanksgiving table to partake in a holiday tradition. The guests would pass the meat to one another, each taking a turn sharing what they were grateful for. Nick Reiner, Rob's son, was seated next to his father. It was 2018, and Nick was living in the guest house on his parents' $13.5 million compound in Brentwood, where the garden was filled with roses planted by the home's original owner, Henry Fonda. It's my understanding that he bought this property from Norman Lear, who produced All in the Family, so many others that are just classics, Different Strokes. I'm blanking on all of them, but they are many. So I think it was owned by Norman Lear before the Reiners, and then the Reiners. Okay. Unemployed at 25, Nick had spent a decade bouncing between this gated enclave and at least 18 rehab facilities paid for by his parents, Rob and Michele Singer Reiner. He has told stories on an addiction podcast about going to downtown Los Angeles' Skid Row to procure heroin and shooting crack cocaine in a McDonald's restroom in Maine. But after each bout of degeneracy or failed treatment, he always seemed to end up back here with his parents. For as much as he resisted their interventions, Nick had become accustomed to the trappings of his privileged upbringing. Unlike rehab, he had a staff to tidy up for him at home. He was so attached to his private quarters that he once demanded the family's housekeeper retrieve him from a friend's house across town so he could use his own bathroom, a childhood friend recalled. That's got to be strange to live in a home where there is staff, coming in and out. And like, I don't even like staff at a hotel. I don't want housekeeping to come in and make my bed. I don't know. It's got to just be a weird way to grow up. We live in a pretty sizable house, by worldly standards. I guess anywhere in the world we live in a pretty big house, but I would never want a housekeeper. Though the builders of this house, because I have, and this is a bit of a tangent. Man, we're just going to keep doing this over. I'm sorry, but we have clippings, newspaper clippings from the original owners where they were advertising for a cook and a housekeeper. It's pretty funny. In fact, the house has servant stairs. Have you guys ever seen a house with servant stairs where there's like the family stairs in the front of the house and then there's the steeper servant stairs in the back? Where we live, houses are like this. That there was just so much money here at one point. Anywho, tensions were high that Thanksgiving, according to a guest who attended the meal with roughly 20 others. This person saw signs that Nick might be using air freshener to cover smells in the billiard room, screaming, yelling, cursing, throwing tantrums so violent, one longtime household employee threatened to quit. As the turkey leg, which I think is maybe the grossest holiday tradition ever, but also kind of fun, they're passing this turkey leg around the table. It's gross. but, but okay. As the turkey leg made its way around the personalized place settings, maybe they were using tongs. Maybe it was like a tong situation where they were grabbing it and putting it on the next plate, which would be so gross. No, it's gross all the way around. My wife would not do this tradition, being a vegetarian. But anyway, as the turkey leg made its way around the personalized place settings and professional flower arrangements, guests and family waxed rhapsodic about the bountiful blessings in their lives. When it was Nick's turn, then it was Nick's turn, quote, well, I'm certainly not grateful for this effing food, and I'm not grateful for any of you freeloaders in my house. I just can't wait to get through this effing dinner so I get back to my room, close quote. Nick yelled, according to the dinner guest. Then he threw the turkey leg at his father's plate. Miss Shivo's Dragon's like, maybe the turkey leg has one of those paper frills on it. Oh, I sure hope so. Sure hope so. That is, because gross, man. Gross. Oh, okay. All right. Rob smiled, the guest said, and picked up the leg. Well, that's really easy to follow. Thanks, Nick. So, of course, Rob Reiner being a I didn't know the man, but judging by his profession, he was a person who found the comedy and found the humor in everything. I think that he was probably pretty unflappable. Plus, he had lived for so many years with Nick having, at least according to reports, outbursts and episodes like this. Okay. Continuing on, like most, I don't like this sentence. I got stumbled on this sentence yesterday too. I'm going to rewrite the sentence. Like most to whom the Washington Post spoke for this story, the people who described Nick's behavior spoke on the condition of anonymity due to the sensitivity of his situation after his parents were fatally stabbed in their home in December. Facing murder charges that could carry the DP, Nick, now 32, and his attorneys have repeatedly, twice, postponed his plea hearing amid reports of mental illness and questions about where his siblings Jake, 34, and Romy, 28, stand in regard to his defense. A Reiner family spokesperson declined to comment. A spokesperson for the Los Angeles County Public Defender's Office, which is representing Nick, declined to answer questions for this story. His previous attorney, Alan Jackson, has said emphatically, Nick Reiner is not guilty of murder. I would add that Mr. Jackson, whose picture I can bring up right here, in this very press conference where he said Nick Reiner is not guilty, prefaced that by saying, according to the laws of the state of California, Nick Reiner is not guilty of murder. And that is a very, very, very important qualifier, right? He's not saying Nick Reiner did not kill his parents, that his parents did not die by homicide. He is just saying, at least to my interpretation, that he did so in an insane state. He was legally insane. And the state of California, indeed, if he is found to be legally insane, did I say that correctly? Would not be guilty of murder. Now, if he is found not guilty of murder by reason of legal insanity, he's still going to be in a hospital for the rest, probably the rest of his natural days. He will be, I don't think Nick Reiner will ever, unless he is found straight not guilty, which I don't see happening, having not seen any of the evidence, we should say. I think he will be locked up for the rest of his life. That's my belief. Okay, interviews with 14 individuals who knew Reiner, as well as interviews he gave to an addiction podcast from 2016 to 2018, paint a portrait of a complicated young man struggling to find his footing in the world. The son of one of the most celebrated filmmakers in Hollywood, Reiner viewed himself as a black sheep in his family and was often consumed by feelings of inadequacy, with occasional bursts of temper or violence that usually coincided with drug use. I will sorry, let me bring this back. I will also say this, and I've shared this before. In the little community to which I belong, the I was, and I felt as a young man constantly in the shadow of my father. And it was extremely uncomfortable. I really disliked it. Now, as I grew and began to understand just how good, and I'm very careful not to say that my father is a great man. It's not like he's like, I don't know, uh, the president of a corporation, or the president of the United States, or cured cancer or anything like that. But my dad is a good man. Once I learned just how good he is and realized how what a benefit it was to me and what a leg up it was to me being born to both my mom and my dad, but my dad was publicly just more forward facing. That it became very comfortable being in that shadow. In fact, I've never really wanted to get out of it once I finally figured that out. And I think that just based on my personal experience as just a tiny little fraction of what Nick Reiner would have experienced, being the son of an icon of the entertainment industry that we all worldwide really value deeply, I can understand that maybe there was just a failure to launch there, where he just wasn't able to get to that place because of maybe mental illness, maybe because of drug addiction, maybe a combination of both. He wasn't able to get to the place to figure out, holy cow, this is great, right? I mean, you kind of kick against the pricks when you're young on these kinds of things, and all you end up with is a bloody foot. And it feels like Mr. Nick Reiner was unable to get past that. Okay, his parents committed endless resources toward his recovery, sending him to treatment centers where most of his peers told the Post he was goofy and well-liked. But after each rehab stint, he would return to treating his addictions casually, even when they led him to despondence and destitution. Reiner was not the only one with famous parents at the Wildwood School, an elite K-12 with 2 campuses in West LA. His classmates included sons of actors Bill Pullman and Robert Downey Jr., but Reiner stood out to John DiCarlo, a friend who met him at Wildwood in kindergarten, for his relatively sheltered childhood. Reiner wasn't a loner, nor was he super popular, DiCarlo said, an assessment shared by others. He would hang out with the same 2 or 3 guys at the beginning of every class, said Paul Manning, who taught Reiner's physical education class from 6th through 8th grade. So it sounds like he was just a normal, average kid in his school, right? I think most of us had that. Well, I mean, the statistics would bear out that most of us were average or near average, right? Of course, there are the exceptions. There are the loners. There are the super popular kids. But I think that we all kind of probably, or most of us, um, identify with that. He's just a normal, average kid. Okay, continuing the quote from DiCarlo. Growing up, he very rarely slept out at people's houses, DiCarlo said. In the summertime, instead of going to sleepaway camp or even day camp, his parents would host Camp Reiner at their house for some of the kids from school. I bet that was an interesting experience. On the final day of 8th grade, not having been invited to any end-of-year gatherings, Reiner and DiCarlo decided to smoke marijuana. It was Reiner's first time trying pot, DiCarlo recalled. Holy cow. You know how I was thankfully sheltered. Like, now I did do sleepovers and I did do sleepaway camps and I did all those things, but I would not have been able to find marijuana at the end of the 8th grade. I, to this day, probably couldn't find marijuana. So an 8th grader, 13-year-old, decided to try pot. Interesting. Okay, Reiner said he didn't start dabbling with harder drugs for a couple more years. In a 2016 interview on the podcast Dopey, a comedy show about addiction on which he was frequently a guest, he told a story about the drug bust that would lead his parents to send him to rehab for the first time. One night when he was 14 or 15, he attended a house party where a friend became so ill after taking drugs that he had to go to the hospital. Afterward, Reiner recalled on the show he confessed to an adult at the party that he had also taken some pills, including Percocet. The news made its way to Michele, who, quote, being a hysterical Jewish mother rushed me to the hospital, close quote, he said. Reiner's parents sent him to Visions, an adolescent treatment center for mental health and substance abuse in Malibu. He would later describe it as fluffy, replete with private chefs, a pool, yoga, and art classes. I, I think there are probably lots of different styles of rehab centers. Again, I've never been in one, but there are probably lots of different styles, I would guess, right? And different styles would work for different patients. He described it as fluffy. That does sound rather, it sounds like he's saying so in a disparaging manner. One of his roommates at Visions, said Reiner, was quick to make a goofy joke, endearing him to the fellow patients. At night, the boys would come up with nicknames for staff members: Traffic Cop for the former military guy, Paul Blart for the lazy one. His parents were there every single weekend for every session, the roommates said. They really never, ever gave up on him. It was the beginning of the couple's all-consuming, years-long commitment to their son, said many who knew them. That is beautiful to read. It's beautiful to read. You know, when I think of hardship, in my experience anyway, can do one of two things to a committed couple. It can either sew them more closely together, make them more one, or it can break them apart. And I'm sure that there's a spectrum. It's not a binary choice, but it does seem like that's what tends to happen. Hardship, especially with your children, right? This is tough. This is extremely tough. And I am aware of, well, I have friends of mine who have had similar experiences in their families where they eventually just kind of gave up on the child that was having that problem, changed the locks on the house, made sure that that person couldn't get in because they were concerned about them stealing things, stuff like that, right? Uh, and no judgment, because man, the amount of resources that it would take to do what the Reiners apparently did. You would have to be the Reiners to have those resources. You'd have to be an extremely high earner. But it's beautiful to see that as a couple, as a married couple, they seem to have sewn themselves together for the purpose of trying to help their son. Um, they tried everything, said a Brentwood mother who met the absolutely miserable couple at a community group where they sought support. The time these two parents they're both very high-powered, busy parents, but it literally felt like they put everything down to be there physically for him. At one point, they had a 24/7 sober companion for him, she said. Unbeknownst to Rob and Michele, Reiner was being exposed to a tantalizing world of harder drugs at Visions. He shared a room with a boy addicted to heroin, he said on Dopey. When I hear for 126 days how good shooting up heroin is every single night, you're going to tell me I'm not going to go out and try effing heroin? He said in 2016. I didn't try heroin until 3 or 4 years later, but the seed was planted. Ooh, that's tragic. A representative for Visions did not respond to a request for comment. Around age 15 in 2009, Reiner stopped attending school regularly and began working with a private tutor. When the lights were on and you conversed with him, he was witty, and being witty takes a certain mental agility, said one person who worked with the family around that time. But Reiner also seemed listless, this person said, expressing concerns about being in the shadow of his father, the filmmaker. Which is so sad because they didn't treat him like that or place that burden on him. They would have loved him no matter what, the person said. Let's pause there for a second. Let's go about halfway and then we'll get into your comments. Hopefully you guys have lots to say here. At 15, when many of his peers began having sex, he said he stole $200 from his parents and hired a sex worker via Craigslist to take his virginity. DiCarlo, Reiner's childhood friend, remembers thinking it was an odd move, but Reiner had done some weird S before. Wow, that is sad. That saddens me. There was one point where he stole his parents' car and tried to drive to Las Vegas. And I was like, go, Nick, DiCarlo said. Great friend. Oh my goodness. It all seemed harmless at the time because I thought he had such a safety net that things would always go well for him. I could never have imagined that he would be truly destitute because his parents would always be there to take care of him and bail him out of whatever situation he was in. By the time Reiner was 16, Rob and Michele were growing tired of his antics and launched him on a more intensive series of interventions. On Dopey, Reiner said he was sent to a program called Second Nature, a 3.5-month-long wilderness program in Utah where struggling teens lived outdoors building fires and cooking their own food. When the program was completed, Reiner enrolled at Summit Preparatory School, a therapeutic boarding school in Montana. I vividly remember him saying, if I could just get my Escalade and a bunch of cocaine, I'd be fine. That was his end goal, said Chris Crowley, one of 4 boys Reiner shared a room with. Students were allowed to see their parents every 12 weeks, and families participated in group therapy retreats. During these sessions, Crowley said Reiner argued more loudly with his parents than other kids did with theirs. Him and his parents did not get along very well, Crowley said. His parents would fly in on a private jet in this little Montana town. They would get into an argument, and the next thing you know, they're flying back out. Summit closed in 2020. Its former executive director did not respond to a request for comment. Reiner didn't appear to resent his parents for sending him to treatment after he returned to Los Angeles, DiCarlo said. In between Reiner's rehab stints, DiCarlo said the two friends would hang out, smoke weed, play with airsoft guns, and watch poorly reviewed scary movies such as Sorority Row. They often ate dinner with Rob and Michele, and DiCarlo said he never witnessed any big outbursts or arguments between them. Reiner had returned from Utah and Montana programs with new prescription drugs such as Adderall and Klonopin, which DiCarlo said he, Reiner, and their friends began experimenting with. Okay, let's bring up our victims here and just see what you guys are saying in the live chat. Just want to check in here for a second. Yeah, Peanuts mom, you're psyching yourself out with thinking about yawning while reading. The more you think about it, the more it'll happen. Indeed, I gotta stop. Promise J. Rhodes says, I've attempted A Tale of Two Cities twice, and I love fiction and Dickens. that one's just tough for me. Well, maybe I shouldn't have chosen A Tale of Two Cities. I was just like, I want Dickens to be on my list. So that was the first one that I thought of. Maybe I should have done like Oliver Twist or something. But I'm more than halfway through and I'm loving. I think my favorite characters are Monsieur and Madame Lafarge or Lafarge, whatever they are. I love the little knitting. I love the coded knitting. It's really fun. Oh, Mooney's reminding me we need a tangent emoji along with Uncle Gavin and others we suggested. Dang it, I know. Hey, listen, maybe some of you are emoji designers. Maybe if you are an emoji designer, I tell you what, if you're somebody who can design awesome emojis, reach out to me on my old website, gavinfish.com. It's right here. Click on this little envelope that will take you to a page where you can reach out to me, and I will put you in touch with my team. And we have a vetting process. Once the vetting process is over, we'll get you into Slack and we'll start getting some of these emojis that Moni has been asking for that we have room for in my YouTube studio. We have enough room for them. Excuse me. So just reach out and Mooney, we're gonna make this happen. Okay, we're gonna do our best to make this happen. Thanks for keeping me on it. Lebu Grizzly says, Gavin, addiction or no addiction, the more stories that come out about Nick, the more he seems like an entitled man-child with zero appreciation for everything his parents did for him. I think, yeah. I mean, yeah, I feel that way. I but I don't know to what extent mental illness has, like what component of it is diagnosable inherited mental illness. You know what I mean? So yeah, thank you for the comment. Robin says, as a parent with a child who has mental health issues, after 25 years, we just get used to things and appear unfazed until we cry in the shower. Oh, Robin. Maybe that's what Rob was doing when he said, I guess I have to follow that, right? Yeah, because I'm sure I'm sure they had their breakdowns. Great conversation happening over here. Let's just see. There are other cases where rich parents, says Tina, where rich parents sent their kids off to these tough love places. It didn't end well for the parents, sadly. Yeah. D says, in this day and age, we need to put our differences aside and allow there to be pathways for everyone who needs help with mental issues. It's medical, not a political, religious, or personal issue. I agree. Rachel, when does the trial start or how long will it be till it does? Years. It'll be probably 2 years on this one. It's my guess. Scotch's mom says, tomorrow night, Turner Classic Movies is honoring Rob Reiner by showing When Harry Met Sally, The Princess Bride, Misery, and Spinal Tap. You know, I think the only Rob Reiner movie I haven't seen is Misery. I've never seen that. And I know how well his movies are amazing. It scared me as a kid. The trailer just scared me, and I was like, but didn't Kathy Bates win the Oscar for that? So maybe I should repent, see the light, and make the switch on that. Okay, we got to hurry, Gavin. This one's going to go long. Okay, continuing on with the article. If they tried a drug and nothing bad happened, they felt emboldened to continue their exploration. Parents would say drugs are bad. And then we would try cocaine, and the next morning we'd be like, whoa, I'm not suddenly a crackhead, DeCarlo said. Then it seemed like we could do any drug. They bought bath salts from a souvenir shop on Hollywood Boulevard and dropped acid in Pan Pacific Park when their parents thought they were seeing a movie at the Grove, DeCarlo said. Then when he was 18, Reiner reconnected with a friend from Second Nature. On Dopey in 2016, he recounted how he and his former classmate drove downtown to Skid Row to purchase heroin. After what Reiner described as an incredible first experience on the drug, DeCarlo said the two of them began seeking out more on Craigslist. Dang it. Once, when Reiner and his friends were looking up the medications he had been prescribed in rehab, they were surprised to discover one meant for bipolar disorder. We were just kind of confused by that, DeCarlo said. There was never an indicator to me that he had any serious mental health problems. That may have been something that developed later as he got older and I just wasn't aware of it. Since his parents' murders, the New York Times has reported that Reiner was diagnosed with both schizophrenia and schizoaffective disorder at various points in his life. In 2020, the outlet reported he was placed under a mental health conservatorship that ended a year later. Roughly a month before Rob and Michele were found dead, a doctor suddenly changed Nick's medication, the Times said. I don't know if it's fair to say they suddenly changed his medication. I think it's more fair to say that they changed his medication, trying to find the medication that would work with what he was suffering from at the time, complaining about weight gain and so forth, at least if you believe what TMZ has reported. With new addictions mounting, the Reiners sent Nick to Alina Lodge, a New Jersey recovery center colloquially known in the community as the Last Chance Ranch. It was here, Reiner later recounted on an episode of Dopey, that he threw a rock through a stained glass window of the campus chapel after staff refused to give him a certain medication. A former employee at the facility said Reiner was nearly kicked out after the incident, but his parents paid upwards of $20,000 to have the window fixed, and he was allowed to stay another 6 months. Everything was a joke to him, the former employee said, describing Reiner as violent, angry. He was troublesome, loud in groups, talked out of turn, just disruptive. Kind of feels like it's building over time, right? Representatives for Alina Lodge did not respond to requests for comment. But Reiner left different impressions on different people in different circumstances. After Alina, let me take a deep breath here. After Alina, he was sent to a long-term treatment center in rural Texas called Burning Tree Ranch. A patient who was also treated there in 2012 recalled Reiner's dry sense of humor and goofy energy. He arrived just before the Christmas holiday and spent days walking around singing the hook from Paul McCartney's Wonderful Christmas Time. Is that simply having? Yeah, okay. He would make fun of himself and commiserate about how miserable the circumstances were that we were in, the former patient said. He recalled Reiner once telling him, I hope I haven't effed up my life so badly that I can't do something with it. But Reiner had still not hit rock bottom. By his own accounts, he refused to attend more rehab programs in subsequent years, and at one point found himself living out of homeless shelters in Maine. He said he befriended an unhoused man who taught him to shoot crack in a McDonald's restroom and inject Wellbutrin intravenously. Afterward, Reiner told the man that his father had once starred in All in the Family. The man didn't believe him, so Reiner took out his ID and he recalled on an episode of Dopey. He was like, Rob Reiner's son would not be under a birch tree shooting Wellbutrin. Nick would often seek out his father during his darkest moments. On another episode of Dopey, he recalled once taking acid at his parents' home. I started to have this thought process of like, I'm tripping by myself. God forbid I do a horrible thing like jump out of a window or get so disillusioned that I do something crazy, Reiner said. He said he couldn't stop thinking about Ariel Castro, a Cleveland man in the news at the time who had been convicted of kidnapping and R-wording 3 women. With his mind continuing to spiral into the night, he decided to wake up his parents. Michele retreated to a couch downstairs, and Rob invited his son to lie next to him on the bed. Calm down, buddy. It's okay, Nick said his father told him. I used to do this in the 60s. You come down eventually. Reiner managed to get clean again and returned to Hollywood around 2014. His dad, fresh off a cameo in The Wolf of Wall Street and directing Diane Keaton and Michael Douglas in the little scene rom-com And So It Goes, that was a great movie, asked an executive producer on Fox's Family Guy if he would be willing to give Nick an internship on the show to help keep him on the straight and narrow. The 3-month gig didn't require much responsibility, recalled Andrew Hollinsworth, a production assistant who supervised Reiner at Family Guy Studios. For 4 hours each day, he would help stock snacks, print scripts, and greet celebrities who arrived for recording sessions. Rob would drop off Nick and pick Nick up every day from his internship, Hollingsworth said. It was like Rob Reiner isn't a busy person, and Mid-City isn't that close. It's not like Rob Reiner isn't a busy person, and Mid-City isn't that close to Brentwood. It was really admirable from that side. From the parent side of things, as many of you would know, uh, that is our our deepest um, our deepest privilege to be helpful to our children. And I didn't understand it until we got adult children, right? And they would, uh, our kids are a lot like I have been with my parents. They don't really want to ask. They want to be independent, and they want to, but when they do ask, it's just like I will drop, and Kimberly, we will drop anything and everything to go help. So I think it's perfectly natural and awesome. Hollingsworth said people in the studios found Nick Reiner to be a really interesting, dynamic person who was refreshingly honest about his previous struggles. He felt like his family were all these pristine, amazing people, and he was sort of the effed up of the family. Hollingsworth said, "We sort of had heart to hearts." And I was like, "You have everything in front of you, all the best connections in the world. What do you want to do?" And he said he wanted to start stand-up comedy. During the internship, Hollingsworth said Reiner started performing at a handful of reputable comedy clubs in LA, including the Comedy Store. No footage of his sets could be found by the Post. Reiner also began working on a project that would eventually turn into the 2016 film Being Charlie, which he co-wrote with Matt, Elisafan, a friend he met in rehab. Initially, the duo envisioned the story as a half-hour sitcom. It evolved into an hour-long comedy drama that Rob's production company Castle Rock pitched to various networks. When no one expressed interest, Reiner and Elisafan turned their script into a film that Rob agreed to direct. All along, I, for lack of a better way of coping, had been asking myself, what can I do to make art of this? Rob told The New Yorker in 2016. Now that Nick was doing better, I told them maybe we can make it a movie. Nick Reiner would later tell the Dopey co-hosts that the film's publicity team urged him to discuss his sobriety while promoting the film, but he was in fact still smoking marijuana and drinking alcohol during the press circuit. "I don't got addiction licked by any means," Reiner admitted to Howard Stern during one interview with his dad that year. "And I'm still very young, so who knows what will happen in 5 years." Oof. Who knows what will happen in 9 years? Ultimately, the film made less than $33,000 worldwide and received poor reviews. Reiner tried to keep his creative career going. In 2017, he began working on a documentary about his famous grandfather, Carl Reiner. But a little over a year after Being Charlie was released, he relapsed. After reconnecting with one of his old drug dealers in 2017, Reiner said on Dopey he got totally spun out on uppers and cocaine, stayed up for days in a row, and wrecked his parents' guest house. He punched a television and a lamp and was put on a plane with an interventionist to yet another treatment program. During the flight, he said he had a cocaine heart attack. Don't know what that is. Sounds pretty self-explanatory. Passed out and woke up in a hospital in Boston. On one of the last appearances on Dopey in August 2018, Reiner said he was smoking weed to prevent myself from smoking any other hard thing right now. Living life as a functional addict was Reiner's ideal situation, said DiCarlo. I think that's what he really wanted. Like, maybe one day, once I'm old enough, my parents are just going to step aside and realize that I can do drugs and it's not going to destroy me. But as much as he wanted to escape his parents' rules, he needed his security blanket of living in a comfortable house where he could make a mess or leave dirty dishes out and not have to make his bed because someone else would take care of it, DiCarlo said. Reiner rarely left his family's property during this period, and when he did, his parents and their staff kept close tabs on him. According to a friend of the family who stayed with the Reiners intermittently from 2016 to 2019, Reiner cloistered himself in the guest house above the family's billiard and screening rooms, a few steps from his parents' residence. He had a cook in the main house where his family placed a camera after he accidentally left the burner on, got distracted, and almost burned down the effing house, the friend said. Signs eventually emerged that Reiner was using again. He would run to the gate to get deliveries for things that clearly weren't food, or suddenly it would start smelling like Febreze in the billiard room, the family friend said. His behavior became more volatile, screaming, yelling, cursing, throwing S, to the point where an employee who had worked for the home for 20 years threatened to quit because he was genuinely scared of Reiner, this person said. One morning, the friend sat with Rob, drinking coffee before the rest of the house awoke. It's like a mansion prison, Rob said. If I knew it could be this bad with one kid, I wouldn't have had any. Oh, that's sad. Still, Rob and Michele were reluctant to escalate matters. To place an involuntary psychiatric hold on Reiner, Rob would have had to watch the cops wrestle my effing kid to the ground and handcuff him to a stretcher and then put him in a psych ward, he told the friend. I don't want to live through that. DiCarlo last saw Reiner in person in 2020. After Rob and Michele were killed and his friend was arrested, he checked his Facebook messages for the first time in a while and saw that Reiner had been asking to hang out and reconnect. Regretfully, it seems like he'd been reaching out to me kind of a bit over the last couple of months, he said, and I just had been dealing with my own things, so a lot of the messages went unresponded to on my end. DiCarlo has since scheduled a forthcoming visit to Twin Towers Correctional Facility where Reiner is being held without bail. DiCarlo said he has reached out to some of their other old friends to check if anyone else wants to go with him. No one has yet to take him up on the offer. And again, that is written by Amy Kaufman from the Washington Post. And I don't know, what did we learn? What did we learn in this? You know, we learned I kind of look like Nick Reiner. Got my hair slicked back and in a ponytail. I'm like an old version of Nick Reiner. That's what I've learned. No, is there anything else we've learned here? I mean, I don't know. I don't know, man. It does seem like this kid was given every chance, every opportunity, every possible break. And for whatever reason, he squandered it. I mean, what do we learn? I don't know. Let's see what you guys are saying over here. Let's bring up Rob and Michele again and see what you guys are saying over here. Let me refresh file. Number one, Tina Lucille says that I must watch Misery. Yeah, it's Kathy Bates, man. I should watch that. Rochelle says, I wonder if there is a history of mental illness or drug addiction in his family. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Scotch's mom, Misery is good, and yes, she won the Oscar for it. I watched it Christmas Eve at my daughter's house for the first time. She was terrified and refused to watch it with me. Yeah, the whole like hammer to the legs thing. And what's the name of the actor? Sonny Corleone. What is his name? I'm blanking on it right now, but also a terrific actor, right? Promise J. Rhodes says, try Nicholas Nickleby if you choose to read another Dickens. It's wonderful. Okay. I don't know that I ever will read another Dickens. It took me a while to get into the Victorian prose, you know, it's kind of tough. Paige says, I would think it would almost be impossible to prescribe medication for mental illness if he was continually using illegal drugs. I doubt he was very honest about his use. Yeah, I think you're right. And that's something that Dr. Drew said. I can't remember where, you know, the job of the medical professional is to see through the facade, right? And be able to see through those lies. Of course, that's going to be more art than science. D says he sounds like someone who loves the drugs and does not want to give them up. You know, this is not a perfect comparison, but before I finally decided to take seriously the idea that I didn't want to be Fat Gavin for the rest of my life, that I wanted to be Fit Gavin, I wanted to be Healthy Gavin, I didn't want to be the the old man that lost his legs to type 2 diabetes and had to depend on his wife for everything. I don't want to be that guy. But for maybe 2 years leading up to it, I would go down to Sheetz or the Quick Fill or 7-Eleven or wherever it was, and I would grab a giant cup and I would go and get myself a Pepsi. And the entire time I was filling that up, I was going, you shouldn't be doing this, man. You shouldn't be doing this. And then talking to myself, well, it's good. You love it. It tastes great. You've been doing this your whole life. And, having that argument with yourself. And again, not a perfect analogy by any stretch of the imagination, but, it seemed, at least at the end of the article, that he was just like, well, yeah, I'm a drug addict and I just want to be functional, and that's the best that I can hope for. That's pretty sad. Pretty sad. All trails lead to love or lack of, is what Fourth Opinion says. Fourth Opinion also says they could have given him the world. He never felt loved. Even though it appears he was deeply loved, he never felt it. That's interesting. Let me just refresh again. Tina says, it sounds as if he didn't have any real friends because he was innately a bad dude and only cared about what he wanted. James Caan, thank you. Yeah, well, I remember, when you turn 15, 16, 17 years old, that's a stretch into adulthood that's very important, right? And I remember leading up to that time, I had certain friends that I hung out with all the time. And then as we started to kind of, as we grew apart because they made choices like smoking was one of the things that one of my friends just decided to do. Like, his family didn't smoke. Nobody that he hung out with before that smoked. Why did he pick up smoking? I don't know, but that took him on, like, I was headed this way and that just took him this way, and we grew apart. And there were several friends like that. Like, if I had a friend that was starting to do drugs, I would be like, I mean, love you, dude, but take care. That's the way I would be at 15, 16, 17 years old. So it seems like the only friends that he gravitated towards were the ones that would do that with him. Yes, and thank you, James Caan. James Caan, you guys are taking me. You're helping me out. Neely888 says people needing treatment don't need a 5-star spa. It's hard work, or should be. Well, it seems like the Reiners tried multiple different things, right? The camping one, the last chance, camp, the whole thing. Peanut's mom says sugar is addictive as street drugs. Yeah, kicking sugar was pretty hard for me, but I would not compare myself to somebody in the throes of, hard drug addiction. And Mooney says the super big gulps were the best in my younger years. Very little ice, all Diet Pepsi. Yeah, I'm a big gulp addict. I have not had a soda since August 28th. Not that I'm counting or anything like that. Wow. I mean, that was a real, I guess, real hard look into a life of a guy that I think by his own fault, and maybe a combination of the fault of mental illness, just never was able to get a grasp on life. And it appears to have led to the murder of his parents, which is just so tragic on so many levels. But yeah, let's get into 3 questions.
It's 3 questions with Gavin Fish.
Pow. Okay, in the 3 question segment, guys, I answer 3 of your questions that you send into 3questions@gavinfish.com. If you think I won't answer your question, boy, do you probably not believe how few questions I actually get. You can send in as many questions as you want, as often as you like. to 3questions at gavinfish.com, spelled out THREE questions at gavinfish.com, and I will do my best to answer all of them. Now, the questions that I've got here that came in, these lend themselves well to you guys telling me how you would answer them as well. So as you're listening to my answers here, I would love to hear your answers as well. So let's get into it. Question number 1. If you could have any superpower for one day, what would it be? What would my daily superpower be? I mean, there are the classics. There's flight, there's teleportation, there's time travel, transmutation. I think I would be. I would want to have, let's say, the Midas touch on command, not just the Midas touch. But yeah, I would love to be able to just touch something and turn it into solid gold, assuming that it just stays that way. And then I'd be like, I'd be the guy that like takes gold in and sells it and stuff like that. Yeah, I think having the Midas touch would probably be my superpower for the day. That's pretty self-serving, but maybe not. I mean, if I could make myself tons of gold, like let's say I was able to make 2,000 pounds of gold. What does gold go for an ounce right now? Let's see. So 2,000 times 16, that would make me 32,000 ounces. Gold price per ounce is 51.95. So we would multiply that by 51.95. That'd be 166 million just with 1 ton of gold. That's all. I feel like I think I've got enough stuff to turn into. Like maybe I would just, that would be my superpower, I think. Love to hear what you guys think. Question number 2. What was your dream job as a child? When I was a kid, all I wanted to be was a pilot and an astronaut. My idea was that I would go to college, I would get my bachelor's degree, I would then go to the Air Force Academy where I would become a pilot. And then after the Air Force, I would apply to NASA and become an astronaut. Those dreams came crashing down when I was 13 years old and I went in to have my eyes checked and I was found to have a severe it's called color blindness, what we call color blindness. And that disqualified me on the spot. So starting at about age 13 to what am I now, 50? I don't know what I want to be when I grow up. I still don't. I only ever wanted to be an astronaut. Question number 3. What is a hidden talent you have that almost nobody knows about? Okay, so I am an open book. All of my talents are unhidden. At least I couldn't think of any hidden talent that I had. I did have we had a question like this maybe a month ago where I told you guys about how I'm able to pop my lips like that, and I can do songs. I can do different tones and pitches and stuff. But yeah, so I asked my wife, and she gave me a list on this little piece of paper right here. She says that I make a great Elvis/Pharaoh. I can sing, I can dance, and everything. She's talking about my ability to. I used to do a lot of theater, and in the 26 years that we have been married, I have only been able to do one musical, and it was Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat. I played Pharaoh. And yeah, I knocked it out of the park. I did. Okay. Another one, she says, I can headbutt a volleyball with incredible accuracy. I can. If we're bumping and setting and spiking in a circle or something, or playing volleyball, yeah, I'm good at I'm good at control of the volleyball with my old head. When you got a forehead this large, you got an advantage. She said, I can find and sing the bass harmony in any pop song. Well, she is wrong about that. I can do that in any song. uh, my ears hear bass very well, and I'm pretty darn good at harmonizing, and so yeah, I do that pretty well. And then she said, I'm a really good teacher, especially with concepts. I don't consider myself a good teacher, but if there's something that I understand deeply, I am very good at explaining that. The old adage that was attributed to Einstein, but he never said it: if you can't describe something simply, you don't understand that thing, right? Um, yeah, I'm pretty darn good at that. And I'm a person, again, never knew what he wanted to be when he grew up past the age of 13, who has I have many interests. Uh, I do lots of different things, and tend to get, because of my obsessive nature, tend to begin to understand those things on a deeper level. And you know, for example, I used to work for a company called CVTL, and we manufactured high-end audio gear. And the chief engineer and owner of the company wanted to be able to communicate to people why he made his electronic networks the way he did, and how he tuned them to different harmonic structures. And in a conversation that he and I had, he found out really quickly that I understood the mathematics of of musical harmonics. Well, it's really audible harmonics, right? It was something I was interested in. I picked it up. And so I remember working at that company too. I had a coworker who was a talented musician sitting next to me. He was a percussionist, and he was just a talented musician all the way around. Uh, and we were talking about, um, I, for some reason, we somebody asked a question about vibrato, like, why do people sing with such vibrato? And I was able to just go, well, I can tell you exactly why. It hides pitchiness. It accentuates timbre. It creates an average note, which makes our ears interpret it as a good note. And I was able to, talk to him about. He's like, "How did you know that, man?" Like, well, choirs, so many choirs growing up, and understanding that as a choir, you can't do that. As members of a choir, you can't do that. You have to be on pitch, because the different resonances will come together and will create that overtone resonance that sounds like a vibrato. Anyway, so yeah, I'm pretty darn good at describing concepts and teaching concepts that I understand deeply. Those are my answers. Hopefully, hopefully you guys are busy with your little flums, typing in your what you would say is would be your superpower of the day, what your dream job would be as a child, and what your hidden talent is, because I would really, really like to read it. And so I'm going to give you a little time to put that in while I read some headlines.
True crime headlines.
Boom. Okay, I'm going to start with a headline that we're probably going to cover tomorrow. This is breaking news today in the case against Michael McKee, the man accused of murdering Monique and Spencer Tepe. Michael McKee court docs say he stalked Monique Tepe before killing the couple. I have requested these documents. Hopefully, I get them in for tomorrow. Ex-husband Michael McKee, accused of killing Monique Tepe and her husband Spencer, visited the couple's Wineland Park home weeks before they were found shot to death, according to newly unsealed court documents. The affidavit from Franklin County Municipal Court provides fresh insight into the investigation. Blah, 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 blah. Court records say McKee visited Tepe home weeks before the killings. According to court records, video showed McKee going into the area of the Tepe home on December 6th and then showing him leaving a few hours later. The affidavit describes the area McKee entered as the curtilage, which is legally considered part of a house, but typically thought of as the yard, outdoor buildings, porches, and similar areas. The Teppies were at the Big Ten championship football game that night, court records say. Monique left the game at halftime to return to the hotel. Court records say Spencer told friends that Monique was upset about something involving her ex-husband. Let's see. I'm just going to skip down. The affidavit also details how Columbus homicide detectives worked to identify a vehicle seen on surveillance footage near the Tepe home before the homicides that left shortly after. That vehicle, identified in court records as a silver SUV, had been seen on video several times near the Tepe house at different times. The SUV, which had distinct features that included a visible sticker on the window, was seen with a stolen Ohio license plate and an Arizona license plate, court records said. The SUV was linked to the past address in Rockford, Illinois, associated with McKee and the hospital where he worked. So we are going to get into this more tomorrow, hopefully, when we get that affidavit. Here's something from News Nation. David may be offered deal in Celeste Rivas Hernandez case, according to the private investigator, Mr. Fisher. I think this is just wanton speculation, but I'll read a little bit of it anyway. The latest arrest potentially related to the case of dead teenager Celeste Rivas Hernandez has private investigator Steve Fisher concerned. Music artist David, whose real name is David Anthony Burke, is reportedly considered a suspect in the death of Celeste after police discovered her body in his Tesla. Neil Langston, which we said yesterday, was arrested in Montana. And then Fisher says, Neo is a person who was around David a lot, and if he was subpoenaed as a witness, that worries me a little bit because, targets typically won't be called before a grand jury or they will plead the fifth, Fisher told Jesse Weber Live on Monday. So if they need Langston as a witness, that makes me think that David might be being offered a deal. So we'll see what happens there. That's interesting insight. Lastly, our old buddy, I say in with tongue planted firmly in cheek, Luigi Mangione. His lawyers aim to keep items police found during arrest from being used at trial. Legal expert says, as Luigi Mangione's highly anticipated federal trial could start by year's end, his defense team is working hard to prevent jurors from seeing some of the most incriminating evidence against him, including an alleged murder weapon. So Mangione's lawyers might have a viable legal avenue to prevent items discovered during a search from being introduced at both his state and federal trials, several experts told The Guardian. One legal expert even said that if the New York City judge decided against admitting these items, it could all but gut the case. I don't think that's going to happen, though. I just thought that I'd bring that up. Those are your headlines.
True crime headlines.
Now let's do one more checkaroo to your comments. Rooter 7777, did you have any withdrawals from stopping cold turkey? Yeah, I was tired and like just really, really wanted the sugar rush, but I just stopped. Miss Chivos Dragon says, I never finished watching the short that Gavin posted about their music room. Yes, indeed. I did post a short and a reel on Facebook. You guys were interested about the music room. Fourth Opinion is asking a question. That's against the rules. Send it to me at 3questions@gavinfish.com and I will consider answering it. Tina, okay, everything inanimate I touch turns. Yeah, that's a good one. Let's see. Emmy Nikolov says, you wanted to be a flight attendant or a travel agent. You wanted to see the world. Yeah, that is cool. Heather Whatever says, your wife is cool. My wife is cool. She's the coolest. Scotch's mom says she can sing. That's awesome. Kat says she enjoys singing. Or he, I don't know. No one wants to listen to my tone deafness. Tina says, you know a lot about many things. It's not something to aspire to. I do get interested in things and I tend to dig deep. Right now, I, for my own therapy, have taken up painting for the first time in my life. And I think it's probably going to be something that will be my next hobby that I really enjoy. I don't know if Can you see that down there? I don't know. I'm working on a painting down here. Just yeah, that's I I get bored of things really quickly. That's the main problem. That's the main problem. Uh, let's see. Fourth Opinion says, thank you for a great evening and unbiased opinion. Enjoy your evening. You too. Irene says, the Thanksgiving incident was a power move, in my opinion. He knew he could mortify his parents in front of loved ones, and he did just that. The kid ran the house. Possible. I've traveled to many places: Singapore, Malta, Bulgaria, Malaysia. Yeah, I think world travel is fun, man. It's fun. Uh, Barb Olson is asking if Javier made it into work today. Yeah, Javier has been doing well today. He's pushing the buttons right. He's switching the toggles. He's pulling the levers. He's doing it amazingly well. And it's only his second day on the job. Can you believe that? Good job, Javi. Well done, Javi. Yay. Okay, guys, that is it. We've gone way over. This has been a really, really long one. Thank you very much for joining me tonight. Tomorrow, we're going to get back over into the Tepe case, as I said, because I think I will have that affidavit that we can go over. I love to get into documents like that. So join me tomorrow night, 6 p.m. Eastern. Join me over in the Fish Tank on Facebook if that is your thing. Just go to gavinfish.com. There's a link to my Facebook group in there. Check us out there. With that, I shall bid you adieu. Thank you very much for being here, and I'll catch you on the next one. Take care. Thank you very much for watching this video. If you liked what you saw, please consider subscribing. And if you have any questions or comments, please leave them below.